This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Robert Scott, June the 27th, 2007. Section 14, Dinner, Real and Reputed, Part 1. Great misconceptions have always prevailed about the Roman dinner. Dinner, note, coena, was the only meal which the Romans as a nation took. It was no accident, but arose out of their whole social economy. This we shall show by running through the history of a Roman day. Ridentem dicere, verum quid vetat, and the course of this review will expose one or two important truths in ancient political economy which have been wholly overlooked. With the lark it was that the Roman rose. Not that the earliest lark rises so early in Latium as the earliest lark in England, that is, during summer. But then, on the other hand, neither does it ever rise so late. The Roman citizen was striving with the dawn, which, allowing for the shorter longest day and the longer shortest day of Rome, you may call about 4 in summer and 7 in winter. Why did he do this? Because he went to bed at a very early hour. But why did he do that? By backing in this way, we shall surely back into the very well of truth. Always, if it is possible, let us have the pourquoi of the pourquoi. The Roman went to bed early for two special reasons. First, because in Rome, which had been built for a martial destiny, every habit of life had reference to the usage of war. Every citizen, if he not a mere proletarian animal, kept at the public cost, held himself a sort of soldier elect. The more noble he was, the more was his liability to military service. In short, all Rome, and at all times, was consciously in procinct. Footnote: in procinct. Milton's translation, note, somewhere in the Paradise Regained, of the technical phrase, quote, in procinctu, end quote, end footnote. Now it was a principle of ancient warfare that every hour of daylight had a triple worth if valued against hours of darkness. That was one reason, a reason suggested by the understanding. But there was a second reason, far more remarkable, and this was a reason dictated by blind necessity. It is an important fact that this planet on which we live, this little industrious earth of ours, has developed her wealth by slow stages of increase. She was far from being the rich little globe in Caesar's days that she is at present. The earth in our days is incalculably richer, as a whole, than in the time of Charlemagne. At that time she was richer by many millions of acres than in the era of Augustus. In the Augustan era, we descry a clear belt of cultivation, averaging about 600 miles in depth, running in a ring fence about the Mediterranean. This belt, and no more, was in decent civilization. Beyond that belt, there was only a wild Indian cultivation. At present, what a difference! We have that very belt, but much richer, all things considered, equitas equandis, than in the Roman era. The reader must not look in single cases, as that of Egypt or other parts of Africa, but take the whole collectively. On that scheme of valuation, we have the old Roman belt, the Mediterranean rib band, not much tarnished, and we have all the rest of Europe to boot, or, speaking in scholars' language, as a lucro ponimus. We say nothing of remoter gains. Such being the case, our mother, the earth, being, as a whole, so incomparably poorer, could not, in the pagan era, support the expense of maintaining great empires in cold latitudes. Her purse would not reach that cost. Wherever she undertook in those early ages to rear man in great abundance, it must be where nature would consent to work in partnership with herself, where warmth was to be had for nothing, where clothes were not so entirely indispensable but that a ragged fellow might still keep himself warm, where slight shelter might serve, and where the soil, if not absolutely richer in reversionary wealth, was more easily cultivated. Nature must come forward liberally, and take a number of shares in every new joint stock concern before it could move. Man, therefore, went to bed early in those ages, simply because his worthy mother could not afford him candles. She, good old lady, or good young lady, for geologists know not whether she is in that stage of her progress which corresponds to gray hairs, or to infancy, or to a certain age. She, good lady, would certainly have shuddered to hear any of her nations asking for candles. Footnote: geologists know not. Observe, reader, we are not at all questioning the pre-human earth. Scripture is silent. Not upon the 6,000 years does our doubt revolve, but upon a very different thing, viz., to what age in man these 6,000 years correspond by analogy in a planet. In man, the 60th part is a very venerable age, but as to a planet, as to our little earth, instead of arguing dotage, 6,000 years may have scarcely carried her beyond babyhood. Some people think she is cutting her first teeth. Some think her in her teens. But seriously, it is a very interesting problem. Do the 60 centuries of our earth imply youth, maturity, or dotage? End footnote. Quote, candles, end quote, she would have said. Quote, who ever heard of such a thing, and with so much excellent daylight running to waste as I have provided, gratis? What will the wretches want next? End quote. The daylight furnished gratis was certainly, quote, neat and, quote, undeniable in its quality, and quite sufficient for all purposes that were honest. Seneca, even in his own luxurious period, called those men, quote, lucifugae, and by other ugly names, who lived chiefly by candlelight. None but rich and luxurious men, nay, even amongst those none but idlers, did live by candlelight. An immense majority of men in Rome never lighted a candle, unless sometimes in the early dawn, and this custom of Rome was the custom also of all nations that lived round the great pond of the Mediterranean. In Athens, Egypt, Palestine, Asia Minor, everywhere, the ancients went to bed like good boys from 7 to 9 o'clock. Footnote, quote, everywhere the ancients went to bed like good boys from 7 to 9 o'clock. End quote. As we are perfectly serious, we must beg the reader who fancies any joke in all this to consider what an immense difference it must have made to the earth. Considered as a steward of her own resources, whether great nations, in a period when their resources were so feebly developed, did or did not, for many centuries, require candles, and we may add fire. The 5 heads of human expenditure are: 1. Food; 2. Shelter; 3. Clothing; 4. Fuel; 5. Light. All were pitched